What's going on, YouTube? I'm Brandon. You're back in the Gilstrap garage, and we're putting new cables on the 05 here. I would like to have the front end buttoned up today. If you saw, I don't know if I posted the video or not because it might be terrible. We did some wheel bearings on the front wheels. I needed to order some 1-inch bearings for the front. I thought they were 30, or I thought they were 3/4. Whatever, my mistake. So we'll still be waiting on that for the front end, but I mean, I'm talking cables, clutch, throttle, get the headlight back on, get the windshield back on, get the front of this thing buttoned up. That's the goal. I'm gonna throw you guys on the chest mount. We'll do some POV shots for today. I think I'm gonna get into a little story of how I became a mechanic. So it's not really gonna be like a how-to or anything. You guys can watch me work. If you got a question, drop a comment. I'll help you answer it. But yeah, I think I'm gonna get into a little storytelling time on why I do what I do and how I got into it. And let's go. Let's have a good time. Let's get this thing done, man. Little snow this morning, nice and sunny and cool out. Still a little cold. I wanted to show you guys this too. I don't know what happened. What has happened to the Gilstrap garage? I used to work on Super Glides and FXRs, Viklas, just like the stuff that I like. But look at the Gilstrap garage. We've got a wide glide right here, and we've got a big wheel right here. No disrespect to whatever you guys are riding, but this is like the opposite of what I'm into on bikes. So, I mean, I can do it. I can figure it out, you know what I mean? But this is just a different way of life out here. I do not know what has happened to the Gilstrap garage, because it is not the club style. I hate using that word. I hate using that term for these bikes, but the club style, you know, scene, the performance scene, there, we'll go with that one. I don't know, it was all performance and like slammed gangster looking bikes, and now we're doing big wheels and wide glides. So I'm gonna throw you guys on the chest. Let's get into it. Should be good. Should be an exciting day. We should make a lot of progress. All right, let's get these cables ripped off. I hope I can do a good job of keeping you guys in the frame of what I'm doing. We're already disconnected up here, so we should just be able to pop these right off. Okay, so I said I was gonna get into a little bit of storytelling time. So when it comes to motorcycles, I got pretty intrigued during the whole West Coast chopper boom, biker build off, everything that, you know, that was on TV. I kind of fell in love with motorcycles and Harley Davidson. The sport bike stuff has never really appealed to me. But I mean, seeing that stuff on TV, I absolutely loved it. Yeah, I mean, I really love that stuff. I remember at one point during all of that, during that whole TV scene and everything, like, I mean, I used to draw pictures of motorcycles and buy all the, get my parents to buy me all the little toys and all that. There was one point during the height of all that, I was probably in like 4th or 5th grade. I remember I took a bunch of my dad's PVC fittings because he was a plumber. I took a bunch of his fittings in his pipe and I took it all to my room and I cut it all down and I built a PVC chopper frame. And I had it for a while, but it took up a lot of space. I had to tear it down. So I mean, like, the way stuff, just seeing the way stuff worked and the way those guys built things on TV and like the fabricating and everything was just always amazing to me. I've always kind of been in love with it, like with the way things worked. And I was always fascinated by hearing people's conversations on like troubleshooting, like when it came to cars and stuff like that. Like, oh, well, this is what's wrong with the car because this and this. I mean, it all sounded like Spanish to me at the time. So there was a lot that I didn't understand, but I was always envious of it. Like, I always wanted to be able to understand the conversations that the people were having and know what they were talking about and know what was wrong with things and how to fix them. But I didn't really have, I mean, my dad could fix a lot of stuff. Like, he could pretty much, I mean, he would fix a lot of stuff, but when jobs were complicated, he would always hire it out or have somebody else do it. So I didn't get a whole lot of that experience from him. I mean, my dad taught me how to solder and stuff when I was real young. I was kind of intimidated by it, but I mean, that was the kind of stuff that, you know, he showed me. My dad's friend, though, I mean, I've known him literally since, like, I was born. Nelson, a shout out to you, Nelson, if you watch these videos. I don't know. Nelson was always like my dad's go-to guy for figuring out what was wrong with his cars and trucks. And when I started driving, figuring out what was wrong with my cars, this car specifically, Nelson always had a lot of that knowledge, and I always kind of looked up to him and looked to him for answers and looked up to him for his knowledge. But I really didn't understand troubleshooting and how things worked together. Like, it was like a different language to me. So I was always really into designing. I never thought I'd end up being a mechanic. Like, I didn't think that I would be able to understand these conversations and figure these things out. My dreams and aspirations were to be an architect, which I'm really glad that didn't work out. But I had a daughter when I was really young. She was on the way when I was 19. She was born right after I turned 20. And I got into construction. And I mean, at that point, let me back up to the mechanic part of a little bit. I mean, I would challenge myself. Like, I rebuilt the front end on my car, and when things were broke, when somebody could give me the answer on what was broke, I would change it. But I mean, I remember, like, 16 years old, I tried to change the carburetor on this car, and it took me probably a day to do it. I mean, I'd go to, like, the local car shows, and I'd take the gaskets out of my exhaust manifolds to make it sound like I had some open headers, when I mean, really all I had was exhaust manifolds, you know. But whatever. I mean, I would try to do things. I didn't like taking things to the shop because that cost money, and I didn't have money to do it. But back to the construction thing. I got into the construction and got around the heavy, you know, I was working by the heavy equipment and everything, and I loved it. I loved being around it. But I was a laborer, worked up to grade checker, and I was 21 at the time. I got laid off. Work was slow, so I started looking for jobs. My dad had just left. He was with this company for like 9 or 10 years. He left there, and since I didn't have any relatives working there, they needed a lube guy in the shop. So I applied for this oiler position, this lube guy position, and I wasn't really stoked on it because I didn't want to go into that company and have to, you know, like, live up to my dad's legacy and do the things he, you know, have these expectations of, I don't know, of whatever they may have been. I didn't really want it. I didn't really take the interview seriously, and they still offered me the job, and I got put in the shop and started buying tools about that time, about 21 years old. And I still, I mean, once I started doing it, I started taking it really seriously. I got good at what I was doing, and I was having fun doing it. You know, like anything that I do, I want to do better. I want to get better. I started to really understand the troubleshooting. Working with the old guy in the shop, Chris Acosta. I owe that guy a lot for, I mean, just for every, you know, the skills and stuff that he's taught me, the patience. And Ed Peasley too, my boss at the time. Between the two of those guys, they probably had 80 years of experience, if not more. I mean, they were patient with me. They liked me. At one point, we all got along with. That wasn't always the case. I mean, the point that I'm making is I started to get good at it, and started taking it really seriously, but there was still a lot that I didn't understand. I was lacking a lot of basic knowledge Like I could fix something and not really understand why it's fixed now or how I got to the answers. So I talked to the company. I said, hey, I found this class. It's pretty expensive. I know you guys pay for schooling and stuff, but if you guys are going to pick up the bill for this, then I'm going to go to school at nights. They said, yeah. Well, get us more information on exactly how much everything's going to cost. So I get them all the information. I lay it out. They're like, man, we don't usually spend this much money on students to go to school. They said, but given your work ethic, given your drive and everything, yeah, we're going to take care of it. And I let them know. I said, hey, if the bill doesn't get picked up for this, because you guys are telling me if I'm left holding the bag on this amount of money, which I think it was like 13 grand, I said, I'm going to quit and I'm going to go somewhere else. No, don't worry about it. We're going to take care of you. I said, okay. Well, I go to school. It's like I think a 9-month program. And I learned a lot of fundamentals of electricity and troubleshooting. We did like 3-phase motors. There was a hydraulic portion of the class which I really needed, and there was, what else did we do? Gear and power transmission, and then we did like PLCs, which I knew I wasn't ever going to really use that, but in order to pass the course, I had to complete that part of the class. So go through it. 9 months goes by, and I'm feeling like I'm gonna get stuck holding the bag. We're getting towards the end of the schooling, and I'm really feeling like, man, these guys aren't gonna hold up to their end of the deal here. And I started applying, and I applied for BNSF was having a huge hiring boom, and I got a job. The company stiffs me on the bill. The day that they told me they were stiffing me, I got a date for I had already interviewed with BNSF, and the day they told me they were stiffing me on the bill, I got my acceptance letter or email, whatever you want to call it, and I had a date set up for my physical, so I knew I was out of there. And then I went to the Barstow LMIT for BNSF, and I thought that was going to be amazing for me. I was going to learn all these new skills, and I was going to become this crazy huge engine builder and do all these new things. And I get there and find out that the railroad is the slowest paced job that you're ever going to have in your life. And sticking it out, I wasn't mad at it. But I go to the railroad, and they supply us all our tools. So now all these tools that I'd been accumulating over working in the mine that I was at, supplying all my own tools, I didn't need them anymore. I just had my toolbox sitting full of tools. And the railroad was such a cake gig that I'm going to have to adjust that. The railroad was such a cake job that I didn't have to really push myself at work. So I had all this energy and time, and the drive and everything. And that's when I started my motorcycle business, because I figured, from all the times working on my own bike, I figured out like, hey man, I'm getting pretty good at working on my own motorcycle because I don't want to pay people to do it. I'm going to start working on other people's bikes, and I've got crazy busy. I've built that skill, I feel like, pretty well. I don't know, I'm kind of all over the place with this story. I wish I would have planned it out a little better, but come on, I don't plan stuff. I just go for it. But yeah, so I worked at the railroad for 3.5 years, and hated it. Hated California. We decided to pack up and move. Came out to Nebraska. I've got a motovlog video on that whole story on why we're here and everything, but now I am here. Doing pretty well at work. Working on some pretty cool stuff. Working on cranes and stuff. A lot of truck stuff. I don't really care for the truck stuff, but primarily do cranes. I mean, it's just worked out well. And so until I got out here, I never really would call myself a mechanic. Like, you know, I could acknowledge the fact that I was good at working on stuff and fixing things and finding problems, but like, I don't know, I think from working with that old cat, Chris, he had always put in my head, like, you're not ready yet, you're not ready yet. Like, it was kind of weird the way he would not really discourage me, but make me feel like you're not there yet, you know? But, I mean, maybe that's part of why I was so hungry to get good and do better and, you know, challenge myself. And then I got out here to this job. I mean, even after I was doing bikes for a couple years, like really, really heavy, which I'm trying to get back into that, if I'm being honest, keeping myself real busy with the motorcycle stuff. But I got out here and I got to this job, and you know, yeah, I'm good at working on stuff. I'm good at fixing things, but then I really realized, like, damn, I think I am actually a pretty good mechanic. Kind of proud of myself and how far I've came in the last, it's been about 9 or 10 years that I've really been, you know, like getting paid to work on things. You know, because I come around some guys who've been working on, you know, I grew up on a farm, I grew up in a shop, I grew up doing this, I grew up doing that, and like, you know, they've been doing it literally their whole life because they had, you know, their dad or their grandpa or whatever that gave them all this guidance. And I didn't have that when it came to working on stuff. I mean, and I don't want that to sound as like a stab at my family, you know, at my dad or anything for not teaching me some of that stuff, but that wasn't his thing. He wasn't a mechanic. He didn't do those things, and didn't really care to, you know. He didn't really mind paying someone to come by and do injectors on his truck. Like, I remember, you know, he needed injectors done on this old 98 Silverado that he had. And at the time I'm thinking like, oh damn, that's probably, you know, if my dad's paying somebody to do it, it's probably a pretty big job. It's probably a pretty hard job. But I mean, if I had to do injectors on a 98 Silverado right now, it'd be nothing. Like, that's just, I think my dad's saying, not that he was ever incapable of doing it. It just, if he second guessed himself, he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't take the chance on just taking something apart, like not being sure if he could get it back together or not. And through working on stuff, through taking on some of these jobs, and you know, literally getting paid to do this stuff, you don't have the option. You take something apart and you know, like, oh, I've got to get this, like, I have to make this work. I've got a customer dependent on it, or I don't have a choice but to make this happen. So, but yeah, back into the story, man. I mean, it all really started from the time I was a little kid. I've always been fascinated with seeing how things work. Like that show, How It's Made. What 8-year-old do you know was watching How It's Made? Like, I always wanted to be working on something, or I loved taking stuff apart, but it took a long time to get to the point where I could put it back together, which is kind of an issue. There was one time, I think I was probably a teenager by then. I had gotten a new bike because I snapped the frame on my Mongoose. My parents went out, they bought me a brand new bright orange Haro. I loved it. But when we went and picked it up, they told me, you were absolutely not to take this thing apart. Like, they had to tell me I'm not allowed to take it apart. because for whatever reason there was a chance that I would, I don't know, to change this or do that. But I mean, this is an expensive bike. They didn't want me messing it up. There should be plenty getting down there. It's gonna make a mess on my hand. I'm gonna have to blow that out with air probably, but I'll let that seep down for a minute and then I'll put it all back together and wipe it up. But yeah, man, I like taking stuff apart. Old broken toys. Whatever didn't work anymore or whatever I thought I could take apart and fix and put it back together, I just liked doing it. And then as I started wrenching too, that was another funny thing. As I started wrenching, I don't think my mom or dad really took it like as serious as I was trying to take it. Like, you know, I wanted to get good at whatever I'm doing for work. I want to be the best at what I'm doing. It's just part of my nature. But I got to the point where, I felt like I was pretty proficient in my skills. And I think I'll get into this story in a little bit. But I'd take on these, I'd do these jobs. And like when my dad bought his backhoe, I'd had some heavy equipment experience. Like, I'm going to fix your backhoe for you. And he'd be like, okay, cool. Yeah, you did that. The story I was going to get into was there was one time I'd gone, my company, the company that shorted me on the money for school, they sent me to a little day class for the new emission systems that were rolling out on these new, the new equipment, all the tier 4 final, the DPF and emissions and whatever, the stuff that everybody hates. My dad had rented a backhoe and was having some problems with it, or maybe it was problems with a truck that he had. I don't know. He was having emissions problems, and he called that guy Chris that was bringing me up as a mechanic and said, "Hey, this is what I got going on. What's your opinion on it?" And Chris told my dad, he's like, "You need to call your son and ask him, because he's the one that fixes all this stuff in the shop." And that was kind of at the point where my dad was like, damn, if this guy Chris is a good ass mechanic, is referring me to him, then maybe he's getting good. And I think that was at the point my dad started taking me a little more serious. I was living with my mom at one point, I think before I had bought my first house, and she was having some car problems. She'd take her car to the shop and just get charged like crazy money to get her car repaired. And at one point I told her, I was like, "Look, I can do these things for you. Like, let me see." And I feel like she was kind of doubtful, like, I don't know about that. Go ahead, but I don't know. And I'd fixed a couple problems and stuff went by. And then her husband had bought he's an owner operator. He's got his own truck. And more recently than ever, I started, picking up a lot more work for him. And my mom told me, she said, "This was never a profession that I'd imagine you would be this good at," or something along the lines of that. Oh yeah, those feel good. Yeah, she never imagined how good I was gonna get. I don't know what she expected for me. I don't know what I expected for myself. But I remember as I started hitting back to one of the original parts of the conversation, like I wanted to be able to listen to people. I liked listening to people's conversations on how they fixed something or how they got to the problem or the bottom of a problem, and being fascinated with what they were saying. And I got to the point where, I could be a leader on those problems. Like, I could hold my own. I could explain how I found an issue or fixed an issue, or explain why I thought what I wanted to replace was going to fix it. Kind of just a proud moment for myself. Like, hell yeah, I'm getting good at this. And I don't want to sound boastful or anything, because I'm constantly learning as much as I can, because I know far from everything and I can always know more. But it's felt good to know that I've kind of achieved what I set out to be. Like, I started investing in myself and buying tools, and the tools don't make the mechanic, but you know, if you spend as much money, I mean, I haven't even put a drop in the bucket compared to what some people spend on their tools, but I mean, when you literally invest this much money into yourself to be proficient, you don't want to just give up on it. Now, I can tell you though, as far as being a mechanic, I've been doing it for a long time. I'm getting older. I'm starting to feel it take a toll on the body a little bit. I am actively trying to push myself into a leadership role, like some kind of foreman position or something like that, where I don't have to do as much of this stuff, crawling up and down and around on all this equipment. But I don't think the bikes are anything. I don't think the bikes are going to be anything I ever give up on, just because I really enjoy doing this stuff. Like it goes back to 2003, 4, and 5 when everything was on TV, and I was watching these guys build motorcycles. Like, this is, if I didn't have to worry about healthcare for kids and retirement plan and things like that, then I would be doing this full time, I think. That's kind of a double-edged sword, because when I was as busy as I was in California right before I moved out here, there was some customers I was dealing with that made me not want to do this anymore. Like, I don't want to have to deal with this. Like, I want to go back to having fun with motorcycles. And at this little low level right here, you know, I've got 3 bikes in the garage. I'm working on my project right now. Like, this is enjoyable. This is really fun for me to do. I don't know. You gotta walk that fine line on not letting stuff burn you out when you really are passionate about it. I think that's part of why I like doing the YouTube stuff so much. I mean, with how busy I am at work, it is hard to, 1, make these videos, then 2, have, 3 hours to sit down and edit a 30-minute video. And going back to another part of the conversation too, I really do owe a lot to guys like Nelson Blackwell and Chris Acosta, who have always been willing to share their information with me and help me and guide me, and kind of just, I mean, Nelson was a huge inspiration, and Chris was an amazing teacher. Chris and Ed, I mean, Chris did a lot more. Yeah, Ed was my old boss. Chris was on the floor with me. Nelson grew up in a tow yard, and he was one of those guys that grew up in a shop and just had, I mean, as far as cars and stuff go, he's just got never-ending knowledge. He's probably forgot more than I could ever learn, but I mean, yeah, that's kind of my backstory on how I got into wrenching on stuff, and took a job that I didn't want that it got me out of working with dirt and got me into a lifelong profession, and has helped me build this skill set. Huge thanks to all those guys. Now that we've got that done, that story went quicker than I thought it would. We're gonna do our clutch cable now. I've got all new fluids for this thing. It's kind of hard changing fluids on this damn stand. Can't even put my wheels on to get it on the ground and drain this, but I think I've got a funnel, like a Forma funnel, and I'll get a bucket. I'll crack this off. We're gonna take a stab at reusing this gasket, because when I ordered everything, I forgot to order it. I think it's a metal gasket. It should be okay to reuse. I'll check in my, let me check my gasket box real quick and see if I've got any in there. Yeah, and there's been times too where I really consider why I decided to stick with this profession. So I get on some of these jobs that are just absolutely miserable, but you get through them. You put the time in, you put the work in, put up with the suck on some of these, and you come out a better person at the end of it. And I wonder too, if I didn't take that job as an oiler, and I didn't get into wrenching and didn't take it this serious, then really what would I be doing? I'd still be out pushing dirt. I'd have been grade checker, like 100, well, I mean, I was a grade checker by the time I quit, but I'd have been chasing heavy equipment through a field, putting stakes in the ground, eventually running jobs and stuff like that. But I'm glad I'm not doing that, for sure. But you know, the line of work I'm into is pretty dangerous. I've been decently hurt before. Try to, you know, stay as safety conscious as possible, but things happen. And I'd like to get to a point where I don't gotta beat myself up so bad in order to make some money. I'm never gonna have an office job. I'd probably off myself if I had to work in an office. Not literally, but I mean, I wouldn't enjoy it. Come on now. That's a good seal. We're gonna put a little screwdriver right there, give it a little, maybe a thicker screwdriver. There we go. She's coming out like honey. It's cold out. I'll go do this on the back of the truck. I've got some bubble wrap down here so I don't scratch my chrome. Let's get some snap ring pliers. I've had this cover open within the last, I don't know, 6 or 8 months because I put this easy pull clutch ramp in here for when my wife was going to be riding this thing more, but then I didn't have a bike and I've kind of taken it over. You know how it goes sometimes, I guess. Cool. Get that off of there, leave that as that. 9/16. Oh man, I got that way too tight. You don't want to make those that tight. I don't know why I did that. Oh, I think it's because it smashed the O-ring. I can see it coming out in pieces. I did the fancy braided lines for the throttle and the brake line. And I know somebody's going to ask me why on earth I wouldn't have done it for the clutch too. And I've had too many problems with those fancy clutch cables not adjusting right and failing and whatever else. So I just go Drag Specialties clutch cable and have the peace of mind knowing that I'm not going to have to deal with it for a long time. So yeah, and if I could give my advice to anybody, you know, I've had really good jobs and changed them and went somewhere else for the sake of not being happy. Now you can't be unhappy about everything, but you can get good enough at what you do to not have to deal with certain things. My big thing is if you tell me you're going to provide something for me, if I work to that point, if I work to get it, and I'm going to get this done, and then you don't follow through on your promise, that's typically when I leave a place. Like with the school situation, with the first big job in the mine, you know, I had great retirement, best health insurance I've ever had, and probably ever will have again. You fall through, I'm not going to stick with it. The railroad, I just wasn't happy with the pace of work and the you know, being able to feel satisfied at the end of the day with what I accomplished. You know, I pretty much sat on my rear all day, every day, for 8 hours a day, sometimes 16 hours a day. And I mean, the money was great. Railroad retirement is the best retirement you could ever get if you can make it, you know, 30 years of service, 30 years of service by 60 years old, you get to retire. You're not going to get that anywhere else you go. Now I'm working union and really great pension plan, good health insurance, I think better than what I had at the railroad. But I mean, I've been very vocal about what I want from the company later on. I don't want to work, you know, I don't want to wrench forever. I want to work towards management and I haven't been promised anything, but I've been told, you know, you're on the promotion list when there's a spot available, and I can't say I'd stick around if the spot became available and they offered it to somebody else. I mean, it depends on the circumstances and stuff, but don't sell yourself short. I know what I'm worth. I know what I'm capable of, and I know what my limits are. I'll work my job as necessary, you know, to keep myself healthy and well, and stay true to myself. Because I know if I quit, if I got fired or whatever, not to sound overconfident or cocky, but I'm confident in my skill set. I can go knock on a lot of doors right now and probably have a job offered to me. But I don't want to. I'm very happy with where I'm at now, and very satisfied with everything about my job. Really, I really do enjoy it. This is always the part that I don't like, because I never know where exactly to run these. I pulled the cable back out. Let's see why it doesn't match up. Well, because it's shorter. How the f did I do that? Did I not get the right length? Let's check the package. 65 inch. 1408 is what I ordered. I ordered a 65-inch cable. Let me see what I meant to get. I measured my cable at 60 inches. 64, so I screwed up on my measurement. God damn it. That's a bummer. So I need a 67-inch cable. Well, I ordered up the right cable because I'm an idiot and I didn't measure it right. So I therefore bought the wrong stuff. But we're not going to let it slow us down. We're going to keep plugging away, getting this back together. All right, YouTube. Well, my memory card on this one's almost full. I'm just going to plug away at some of this dumb little stuff. Started out real strong. Hope you guys enjoyed the story. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned. We got more coming.